All right, for the second stuff sack design, we start exactly the same way we did last time, with whatever it is that we're making the stuff sack for. So in this case, it's one of my hobo stove projects. This one's a little different. It starts off the same way. IKEA utensil strainer, a lid that I picked up off of eBay, but also from IKEA is another part of their same lineup of items that I found. I found this at both of these obviously in Value Village. The unique thing is they nest in as if they were made for each other, and one of the bales that I often make using the stainless steel skewers. Probably what's different about this is the legs on the feet on the bottom are made from conduit clamps, and they're designed so that I can swing them out and have all four of them swung out for a little bit more stability, but they work just fine turned in like that as well. So again, this video is not about the item itself, it's about the stuff sack design. So we'll just put that aside for a second. Again, I've already pre-cut the piece of material that I wanted, and this one is cut differently. Whereas in the last project, it was what we called a fold-over design, so that there was a seam running down one side, but a fold running down the other. In this case, it's going to be a fold-up, so there's going to be seams on both sides of the stuff sack, and the bottom is going to be where the fold is. And I like doing that when I'm using items that are of a taller nature, such as this hobo stove kit. So the concept is I just took the piece of material that I had, laid the item down that I wanted, lid can go aside for now, and just folded it over and made sure that there was enough slack in the material that I had room for my seam allowances, because once we get this sewn together, if we feel it's a little bit too loose, we can always sew it tighter. In fact, it gets easier that way. So again, I have what looks to be more than enough material for what I want to do here. In fact, let's just set this upright. You can see I probably have, maybe you can't see, I have too much material for this project from a height-wise standpoint. So I'm going to probably end up cutting a little bit of it off just to get closer to the height I want. Now, what's going to be different about this one in the start off is where in the last one we created a channel, the full length of the material. In this case, we're going to be creating two channels, one at either end, so that it's going to be folded in and sewn down. And on the other end, same thing, because we want two channels so that when they come together, there'll be a channel on both sides. And I'll show you what I mean. So rather than take up the time showing you how I pin this together like I did in the last one, I'll do the pinning work and then I'll come back and show you that. All right, so here is the fold up stuff sack, the one that folds from bottom to top to form, it'll be sewn down two sides. And as you can see, I have my channel pinned down on this end, ouch, watch your fingers, and channel pinned down on this end. So what I'll need to do now is take that to the sewing machine, sew the two channels down, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Okay, so I've completed the channel at either end of this stuff sack. So I have a channel sewn here, again done with the light thread so that you can see it. Same at the other end, both are done. So again, like the last stuff sack, I'm going to turn it so that the raw edge is on the table. Then I'm going to take my item that it is I am making the stuff sack for, bring the sides up, make sure that I've got enough, and I have just enough material so that the stuff sack will close when it's all sewn in. And yeah, now I'm ready to do the same thing. Here, I'm going to be folding the two ends together. So now I have the two channel ends meeting each other at the top, like that, inside out. And I'll just be sewing down one side and sewing down the other side. So again, I'll go off camera, pin and sew those, and then bring you back. Okay, so we have sewn down both sides of this stuff sack. And we're about to put the drawstrings through and make sure that it fits the item that we want inside of it, in this case the hobo stove that I have sitting here. But before we do, I just wanted to show you, like the last stuff sack, I did take a notch out of the corner so that when it's inside out, it makes it easier to pull the drawstrings through. So before I turn it inside out, I just wanted to show you what I'm going to use for drawstring on this one. Now, I decided against using paracord, not because paracord wouldn't work. I just thought that what I am going to use is better for this specific design. So this is number 36 bank line, also known as tarred mariner's cord, and I sized it so that it would fit from the edge of the bag out about 4 inches. I suspect that's going to be a little longer than it needs to be, but once I tie it in the overhand knot, I can trim off the excess and melt the edges. So I've got 2 of those because we in fact have to come in from either side with 2 drawstrings. And when you have a drawstring bag like this, usually you don't need a cord lock on each side. Just pulling it together will cinch it up just nicely, as you'll see in a minute. But first, let's make sure that our hobo stove fits inside. So I'm going to turn it inside out, or right side out, I guess, with all the sewn seams on the inside now, hidden so they're not shown. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now we just have to slide everything down inside, make sure it fits as far as the width and the height. Plenty of room, not an over excessive amount, as you can see, just a little bit of room on either side, and it comes together on top so that when I draw the drawstrings, it'll pull together and close in around it. Yeah, that appears to fit well. If it hadn't fit well, if it was too big, I could turn it back inside out and just sew down one side or the other and just make it a little bit more narrow in this direction until it fits just the way I want it. It's always better to start with the bag being a little bit bigger than you think it might need it, and you can always make it smaller. It's hard to add material back on afterwards. All right, I'm going to draw the drawstrings through here. I'll do one side to show you how it's done, and then I'll do the second side off camera. So I'm taking my fish, running it through. You can see it came through on this end here. Now I have to feed it back through the other side. Just continue running the material through. So this looks similar at this point to the last stuff sack, and it is. I'm just going to run it through till it comes out the end, as you can see. Take one end of my bank line, put it through the loop at the end of the wire, start the feed inside the channel, and pull it through. And there we go. So there's my cord coming out one side of the bag. I am going to do the same thing on the other side, tie it off in knots, and then you'll see how that works. Stand by. Okay, I have the drawstrings pulled through on both ends, tied in just simple overhand knots. And the way this works, and I'll put the pot in it in a second to show you, the way this works is you just pull, and then you draw it in from the top. And you can see it doesn't even need any type of a cord lock or anything to keep it snug at that point. So let's pull this apart. Place my item inside. And again, I like this style of stuff sack for items that are taller than they are round in diameter, so you get more closer to a cylindrical shape. So it's pulled together. You can see it's nicely closed at the top. It fits. There's a little bit of slack, but that's fine. But like the other stuff sack, we have all this wasted material down here in the 2 corners. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get that to fit so that it was a little less wastage on the bottom of the bag and just a little snugger to the sides of the pot, or in this case the hobo stove? Well, we could have started with a more complex design like I made with the cylindrical stuff sack, but there is another way we can achieve something very similar, and it's a lot easier and a lot less measurements. So I'm going to have to change my camera angles, and we'll set up and we'll go through that modification. Okay, I've changed the camera angle slightly. Hopefully you'll be able to get a good view of what it is that I'm going to do. So here we have the stuff sack, the completed stuff sack that we've been working on. And we're going to turn this into a squared bottom. And what I meant by squared is literally a squared bottom on it. In fact, if it's good material, once you're finished, it'll actually stand up on its own, similar to a tubular stuff sack will do it. So in order to do that, we start by turning the bag inside out. Flatten it out nicely. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start by measuring right across the bottom from seam to seam and see how long that is. So using my ruler, I measure in very conveniently right at 10 inches. So I have a 10-inch wide bag seam to seam, not edge to edge, but seam to seam. All right, so knowing that I have a 10-inch full width, what I'm going to be doing in creating a square bag is that we're going to have 5-inch sides. So all 4 sides of this will be 5 inches. In order to get a 5-inch side, this is a little bit tricky. It's not that difficult, and hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate it in a way that you'll be able to see what I'm doing. But I want to fold the bag or lay the bag down on the table in such a way, it takes a bit of manipulation to get this the way I want it, so that I have an angle. Nice 90-degree angle on the bag here, with the very bottom as a seam running down the center. Now, when we created this bag, this is one that we folded up from the bottom, so we don't have a sewn seam. It would have been a bit more convenient had this had a sewn seam along here that we could use for measuring. But I was able to just press down with my finger to make a nice clear impression on the material. Hopefully you can see that, and that'll allow me my center seam, because we're going to be measuring off either side of that. Alternatively, when we created the sack, if we hadn't used one piece of material folded up from the bottom to create it, we could have used 2 completely separate panels brought together and sewn on 3 sides. That way we would have ended up with a seam here. So remember that it was a 10-inch cross from seam to seam. So I want to create 5-inch sides. In order to create 5-inch sides, I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to find half of that 5 inches, which is 2.5 inches. I'm going to lay the 2.5-inch mark right down on the seam, right there. I'm going to bring it back. Now, this does require that you are at the perfect angle with the corner here, or at 90 degrees to your center angle. And bring it back until the edge of my ruler here is touching the outside edge, and the 5-inch mark is touching the outside edge there. Make sure it looks like it's at 90 degrees to this line, and I am now. I have my Sharpie marker. Remember, this is the inside of the bag, so this mark is not going to show up on the outside. Draw a little better. There we go. So you can see now that I have a line drawn across at 90 degrees to this line. Measures 2.5 inches on either side. And what I'm going to do now is pin this and sew it, and then I'll bring it back. And I'll do the same thing for the other end at the same time, and you'll see what I've accomplished. Okay. I've sewn, this is where I had the line drawn, the pins across, and I've sewn right down that line, both sides. And you'll notice now that I have a nice box shape on the bottom here. So my next step would be to trim off these triangles on either end. Now, it's not necessary. In fact, if you want to, you can just fold those 2 triangles in, one on top of the other, and tack them down. And it'll give you a reinforced bottom if you want to leave it like that when you turn the bag inside out. For me, I'm just going to take that little extra material off. So I'll do that and bring it back. All right, so I cut the 2 triangles off on both sides. Let's turn the bag inside out, or right side out, I guess. And you can see now I have a square bottom. Let's put the hobo stove inside. And you can see, now let's just draw it shut. And you can see how, while it's not a rounded bottom, I have much less material flopping around on it, so it more closely fits the item that I wanted to put inside of it. All right, that's another project completed. Let's close this video up. So I hope you found this video both interesting and helpful, making 2 very simple design stuff sacks. I'd be interested in knowing what you think. Leave your comments in the section below. If you'd like to see more videos like this, DIY simple videos, let me know. Maybe you'll suggest some topics or things that I can work on. But in the meantime, get out and explore. Take that path less traveled. It'll make all the difference. Bye for now.